Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of the podcast, the RiseUp podcast, rather. Today, with me, I have a very special person, and her name is Laletha Nithiyanandan. So, Laletha, welcome to the RiseUp podcast. Great to have you here. And
Thank
before we
you.
begin, a quick round of introduction from you to our audience.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Lita, or Laletha as people call me, and I run a behavioral science-based consulting company. And before that, I've always been an entrepreneur, so I ran a very successful business that I sold to Fortune 500 company in Asia.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm really eager on the topic that we're going to be discussing today with you. And
Mhm.
before we begin, quick introduction about myself, folks. I think you know me already. I'm Ashish Manchanda, founder and CEO of RiseUp. And RiseUp is an AI for leadership development. So before we begin, what's the topic for today, Laletha? And it's a very controversial topic, but it's important to be addressed because in a way there are a lot of misconceptions that people carry with the term that we're going to be discussing today,
Mhm.
and it's important that we bring out our perspective and opinion about what it is really and what how it should be looked at, right? So topic that we're going to be discussing today, folks, is high performing teams or high performing individuals, also sometimes known as 10x employees. Is it right? Is it not right? That's primarily what we're going to be discussing today. So, Laletha, before even we begin, quick thoughts on the topic. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I kind of don't agree with the term 10x, mainly because I feel people are not machines.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to attribute in business, especially terms that are used for machines onto employees. We also
Often,
use a lot of war terms in business as well,
yeah,
or in working the workplace. And I think we need to look at the humanity side of it.
totally agree with you. All right. So, let's basically dive right into it, right? Let's
Sure.
basically bust some myths around the term 10x and high performing individuals primarily, right?
Mhm.
What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions around 10x employees or high performing individuals?
So the thing is, when you look at individuals and then you start classifying them or ranking them like they used to some years ago,
Mm-hmm.
what happens is that you start putting people in boxes. And if you look at the whole organization, like if you have a team, you always have your top performers, a few of them, and then you have your bottom performers on the graph who have other methods, that we have to get their
Yeah,
performance up. Perhaps they're new, or perhaps they just don't understand the work, or they don't want to perform, we don't
yeah,
know. But the majority of the people in the curve are people who come to work every day,
hmm,
who do their best.
hmm,
And so these people get neglected because a lot of managers tend to focus on the top performers
hmm,
or the bottom performers. And I've spoke to so many leaders, when I ask them, where do you put your attention on, they always say the top or the bottom.
yeah,
And that's not where we should be, because
hmm.
the jump in performance, if you just look at performance itself, from average to high is a much easier jump
Easier
than
and
from low
faster.
to high.
That's correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Hmm.
And so I think that that's one of them, that we need to look at. And the other thing is the fact that because we're dealing with humans, we have emotions, we have family challenges, we have
Yeah.
lots of other things going on with us. And so I think we actually travel through maybe 4 doors or windows, at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start something in the beginning of the day, sometimes you're enthusiastic, you're hopeful, and
Yep.
then you start questioning things. You
Hmm.
go, is this right? Why are you doing it this way? Why can't
Yeah.
we do it another way?
Hmm.
And then depending on the answers, you sometimes get to a place where you can review and align.
Hmm.
Or if you don't, then you have to spin out of orbit, and sometimes you have to leave the organization.
Correct.
And then if you are aligned and you get to that renewal,
Hmm.
get to that review and align, you get to
Hmm.
a renewal stage.
Hmm.
And the renewal stage is where you feel, okay, I'm going to ready to start again, and so you do that cycle.
Correct.
And then happens even in a week for us
Correct.
as leaders.
Correct.
So why can't employees also go through that questioning stage? And sometimes
Totally.
I feel that when they're questioning, we think that, oh, they don't like it. Immediately they are against the system or something like that.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to allow people to make that progression or make that learning for themselves, because we want to move people from the have to curve
Correct.
to the want to curve.
Correct. Correct. So in a nutshell, performance isn't linear, right? It is gonna be wavy, and we need to be comfortable with the fact that performance is gonna be wavy. So
yeah, you regress sometimes,
absolutely.
but then it makes your commitment to progress even stronger at times. Even when we measure performance, like for safety and things like that, we expect regression first for a while.
Correct.
And then we expect them to recommit again.
Correct.
And then it sticks on. So how do you get people to habit strength?
Yeah, right. Cool. So yeah, in my experience of dealing with leaders and the so-called term 10x, right? One of the biggest misconceptions that I encountered was the fact that people think that individuals are typically 10x or high performing. And in my mind, it's actually the other way around. It's actually the team that is either a 10x team or a high performing team or a low performing team in totality.
Absolutely.
It's not about the individual. If basically, if you focus as a manager, if you're focusing on an individual, then you're not doing justice to your team primarily. An individual can only carry you to certain extent, but to go from good to great and beyond is basically the collective, collective motivation of the team that is going to take you there. So I think that's one of the biggest myths that I have seen around this term. That, hey, I have a 10x employee working with me, hence we're going to be successful. But it's basically, as a manager, you need to build a high performing team instead of an individual. That's going to do wonders for you primarily.
Absolutely. And when you build around individuals, you build by exception. You manage by exception.
Correct.
You don't look at what's going on with everybody else.
Yeah.
And you also create competition.
You do, and you also end up making special reservations for that individual. You do special treatment, and that basically feeds toxicity in the team rather than the performance culture that you really want to build.
Yeah, I think as a leader, you have a big responsibility, because it depends on what you pay attention to. That is exactly what everybody is going to pay attention to.
Right.
And sometimes when we pay attention to somebody who is 10x employee, and they may be performing, but we overlook some of the bad behaviors.
Correct.
Then we're actually telling people it's okay.
It's okay.
Just perform. Because we don't care about all these other behaviors.
That's true.
Or the culture or the values of the company.
And that's where everything starts to go south, right? You're done, then you're done. Then you're in a downward spiral very quickly. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Cool. So we've been talking about this term high performance quite frequently today, right? So let's start by talking a bit more in detail about it, right? As for you, what is a high performing team, right? And how do you look at high performance in today's culture or today's context, for example?
To me, a high performing team is one that is able to perform on its own, even when the leader is not around. They're doing the right thing, even when no one's watching. Especially like I talked to you about safety examples. Where if you're working in a plane or an airport or a space station, you have to do the right thing.
Correct.
You have to follow procedures. So it's that kind of rigor that you build into teams, any team for that matter. If you're able to do the right thing, even when there is nobody to watch over you, then you've done the job. So to me, a high performing team is not just about performance, it's also about people who gel together, they work together, they enjoy each other, and they're there because they want to work with each other. What about you, Ashish? How about you?
Yeah, so I think very similar thoughts. Primarily, I would term it like aligning with the company's or team's values, basically. if you have a bunch of individuals that definitely work with each other, they enjoy working with each other, and they follow the values that the team follows, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where primarily high performance comes from, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a manager, and I've been at it for a long time now.
Yeah.
I don't tend to hire people who are individually brilliant, because
Yeah.
I don't believe in that individual brilliance at all. I think I believe in that context of bringing smart individuals together and enabling them to perform together in a stronger manner. And that's why I look for certain aspects when I'm hiring for, right? And these aspects are the drive to succeed, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much hunger do they have in themselves? Are they taking initiative in their lives or not, right? To be
Mm-hmm.
able to learn new things, learn new skills, because skills can be taught, attitude
Mm-hmm.
can't be taught, right? So that's
Yeah.
primarily where I look forward to. And finally, are they able to collaborate with each other or not, right? The most important piece for me, because if they're not able to collaborate with each other, they're not going to create that cohesive unit that I would want them to create in the end, right? And very
Mm.
importantly, they should be able to function even when I'm not there, right? To the highest of the
Yeah.
standards. Nobody is trying to police them, because if I start doing that, then I'm micromanaging, and that is not my style of working. So
Yeah.
if I end up getting in a scenario where people want to be micromanaged, or they only work when I push them, that's basically a big downer for me, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one other thing for me.
Yeah,
When I hire people who are very different from me.
right,
Um, and I look, because I always have a belief that other people complete us.
correct,
So there are things that I do very well, and there are things that I don't do well.
right,
So if I can, in some way in my hiring practice, keep bringing in people who are different from each other,
yeah,
then I think you can have a really good team.
yeah,
Only thing with that is you can also have a very explosive team, because
correct,
not everybody comes from the feeling that if someone's different, then I have something to learn from them.
yeah,
Sometimes they fight or argue through
totally.
that process. So I always tell them that when you work with me, sometimes you end up in an explosive sort of
That's a natural
situation,
process. Yeah,
environment,
yeah,
but it's because other people complete us, and you do leave your ego at the door.
correct.
You come in and you can work together, then we're good.
Interesting. So, uh, let's talk about performance, right? And like we
Mm-hmm.
said, performance is gonna be in curves, and especially in any organization or in any team, you're gonna have high performers, medium performers, and then low performers, right?
Yeah.
As a manager, we have established the fact that going from taking the middle performers to high performance is the easiest way and the fastest way that you can increase your team's overall performance, right?
Yeah.
As a manager, what can you do to enable high performance in situations where people are off the performance curves, either for a long term, or they're constantly in the middle layer, and then you want to push them to the top layer? So what would you do as a manager or a leader in this situation?
Yeah, so there's different sort of curves that go on, and there's one that happens where boss in town, boss out of town, boss in town, boss out of town, and I have people who tell me, see, I told you, if I'm not around, nothing happens, and they don't realize that they're the cause of it.
They're the cause of it.
Yeah, they're the cause of it. So I think the most important thing is when you're working with people and looking at performance, coaching is very important.
Hmm.
Coaching performance,
Hmm.
especially in the beginning when they're learning a task.
Yeah.
And you have to coach more regularly,
Hmm.
and you have to reinforce a lot more in the
Hmm.
beginning.
Hmm.
But then, you see, the thing is, when you look at performance and the kind of reinforcement that
Yep.
people get, or the kind of consequences they face when they are doing a behavior,
Yep.
initially it starts with management.
Yep.
As a manager, I asked you to do a task and you do it. And then I encourage you and I say, hey, good job, you've done it. How about we try it this way? How about we add this and things like that? So initially you're doing it because you have to, because I'm asking you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have a little bit of 1, 2, But the minute you start getting a bit better at the task, you feel a sense of natural reinforcement coming from inside you.
True.
You feel like happy about it, but your peers start noticing that you're good at it.
Correct.
So when other people around you start noticing it, then you're getting other reinforcement, then you don't need your bosses that much.
Totally.
Although it becomes an intermittent schedule of reinforcement.
Correct.
And then after a while, you get to doing it because you want to, because it's self-management.
Yeah.
You've gotten to self-management. So that's the curve. The curve is you have other people propping you up in the beginning, and then you have that reinforcement coming from the people around you. And then you do it because you want to, because you've already got a reputation. Everybody thinks you're good at this, so you better be good at this.
You become an expert then, correct.
Or you better be good. You have a reputation to keep.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So that's part of that process of doing it. But there are a lot of things that a leader can do. They can notice what's working, and a lot of times we tell people what's not working. We don't tell them what's working.
What's working?
Like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. But what do I do?
Yeah, do more of this is not what we're telling them, right?
Yeah. So I think noticing what's working and then reinforcing very quickly, and then having short conversations. We don't need to have 1 hour reviews with people.
Correct.
It's too long. They've forgotten everything already.
Correct.
From what happened 6 months ago,
Correct.
Or even monthly. It's better that you have short conversations, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Actually, if you think about it, of any leader who's made an impact on you and they said something meaningful that you remember, it's usually a short interaction.
True.
It's not a long one.
And mostly informal rather than formal settings, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I always ask people, why do you waste time with these long meetings? Nobody wants to hear you talk.
Correct.
And if you ask, and I ask people, leaders, how long after your boss starts talking do you stop listening?
Yeah.
And normally it's less than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think we have to talk less. We have to spend more time with them.
True.
And we have to reinforce. What about you? What do you do when you're reinforcing teams?
Primarily, when you're off the performance curve, you need to understand what's happening, right? For me, it's a little bit about self-reflection that goes into it. That, hey, what is it that the individual is doing that we can bring back? So I'm talking of situations where a person has been a high performer or been performing well, and then the performance drops, right? And that happens quite frequently, right? In situations where we understand that performance is not going to be a linear curve. In those situations, I try to understand the underlying reason behind it, right? Sometimes it's that individual feels that, hey, the work is monotonous, so how do you bring variety in their work? Sometimes they're feeling they're not skilling, they're not upskilling, so we basically bring tasks that might be able to help them upskill a little bit. So trying to understand the situation for each individual separately, because I don't think that just by doing one thing for everyone is going to solve it. The context and their issues are going to be very different. So as a manager, my job is to understand what's the underlying cause, right? If I understand the underlying cause, then it's very simple. Then the solution presents itself primarily in front of me.
Absolutely. And sometimes they're just tired.
They are. You just need a break. They just need a sabbatical. Take time off, get recharged, and come back.
I tell you the greatest myth I told myself, and I'm embarrassed to say it took me 20 years to learn it. Because when I ran my own business, I used to think that everybody wants to excel.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to reach, high ground and be promoted and earn money and all that.
That's not true at all.
When I sold my business, I became an employee for the first time. And then I heard what people were thinking. In fact, I saw my bosses do things and I thought, oh my God, am I doing that as well? But one of the things was, I realized that some people just want to go home.
Yeah.
They're happy.
They're happy with where they are right now, right? They're happy with the money that they're earning. They're happy with the kind of growth that they're getting. Even if that's not high growth, they're pretty happy with their lives, isn't it?
Yeah, it took me so long to learn that. Because I was only looking at it from my perspective, that everybody wants this. No, not true. Some people just want to be left alone.
Correct.
They just want to
Correct.
do the 9 to 5, go home and spend time with their family.
And I think this is where a lot of managers go wrong, Laletha, because especially if you as a manager have been a high performing individual and you become a manager, and most managers have been high
Yeah,
performing individuals, because
yeah,
that's how you become managers, right? Because
yeah.
you have been performing well, hence you get a team to manage.
So they
And
promote you
typically,
to failure in a way.
they do. And as a manager, you do yourself disservice by expecting the same level of performance that you are used to from everyone in the team, which
Yeah,
is never going to happen, right? You need to
yeah.
understand what performance level is your team members are comfortable operating at, and they're going to be different people at different levels, and then operating with them at that level is what the trick is for a manager.
It's true. And also, if you are performing and it's become such an intuitive process for you and you're doing it like
Yeah.
very fluent in your behavior and you're doing it, sometimes it doesn't mean just because you're doing it, you know how to explain to someone else how to
Correct.
do it.
Correct. Correct.
So you're not able to articulate, and so people get lost anyway.
True. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So let's talk about a very adjacent topic of overworking while chasing high performance, right? And typically it happens, like we said, right? Managers are used to chasing high performance for themselves and for their teams, and they end up pushing their teams quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it causes burnout very quickly because they are setting their team for failure. They're setting expectations that might not be feasible or beyond the capabilities of the team, right? Have you seen that happen? Do you have any personal anecdotes, examples?
The whole industry I came from was very target oriented, and because of that, there was always this push on targets. And I used to say that not everyone's driven by targets. Some people are driven by a dream. Like if you tell me you got to do this number by this date, it doesn't motivate me. But if you give me something bigger to work towards, then it motivates me. So different people are different. I think that's one of those things. But I find a lot of times in those environments, people threaten others, do it or else, you got to do this. So then you know that people are just doing it because they have to just cross that deadline.
Correct.
And then they take a break.
Correct.
Then the performance drops a bit, and then you have to push them to pick it up again. So that's part of the problem. I think that when you're creating a pressure cooker sort of environment, sometimes I always feel as a leader, you have to take your foot off the pedal a little bit, and allow people to find their balance so that you can work out how the team is going to go. Because there are some people who may never ever get to that high level of performance within the team, but every month they will deliver a certain a stable amount, you see.
Which is important for any team to function, isn't it?
It pays the rent.
It pays the rent.
So you need people to pay the rent, and then you need the star performers. So it's like, how do you manage that, the fluctuations, and not transfer your stress to them? Correct. So if you can make it fun, make it enjoyable, and then if they buy into it, I think they will work hard. Right. Yeah.
Totally.
I think good signs of those are like, bad signs actually are when people are falling sick a lot.
Yes.
When people are taking time off just after a public holiday or one day or something like that. Then you know that something's going on.
Something is amiss. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I think there's a very fine line between chasing high performance in the team and micromanaging the team. And often managers are guilty of crossing that line very quickly in an instant, right? Since they're chasing high performance, they think that, hey, for me, I need to be constantly following up with my team, right? Hey, have the numbers been met? Hey, have you followed up with that client? Hey, how is this going? Hey, is the report ready or not, etc., right? And
it's horrible.
It's horrible, right? And I've been in that situation as an employee, and I hated it badly, right? I never was able to excel myself in that situation as an individual.
And why do you ask those kind of stupid questions? Like, did you hit your target? Or did this, you can read it in a report.
Yeah.
Nowadays with technology, you can find
You
out
have
all that
everything.
information.
Absolutely.
What if you instead ask them, what's your best customer experience you had this week?
Right.
Ask them good questions.
Or
Ask them
what is a bottleneck that I can help you with, right?
in a way, but you can also say that, what are you most proud of that you achieved
Yeah,
this week?
yeah.
Because when you ask them questions about what they've achieved, they light up.
Correct.
And then it pushes them to do more on their own.
Totally.
So I think it's about sitting with them and asking them good questions instead of what's your target? Have you
Correct.
achieved your target?
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically the worst feeling ever that you could have primarily, right? And
Yeah.
for me, I think when you work with individuals, it's not about chasing them.
Yeah.
It's about empowering them. So if you, as a manager, if you have made the roles and responsibilities clear to them, have you help them understand how are they contributing to the team's success, and then
Yeah.
let them do their job, right? Let them do their job, and if they get stuck, they're going to come to you, right?
Yeah.
Constantly chasing them is only going to waste their time, and
It's
you're gonna
like
take the energy out of that task rather than feeding energy to them.
it's like putting a cake in the oven and then opening it every 5 minutes.
Every
Is it
5 minutes.
done? Is it done? Is it done? Is it done? It's not going to work.
It's not
And
going to
the-
rise up again.
And the language people use is very interesting when I hear people talk. When they say things like, I have to drive performance.
Yeah,
I have to chase on this.
correct.
Then it already tells me, hey,
Where it's
you're
going.
going to keep chasing. You're going to keep
Correct.
chasing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's talk about some skills now, Laletha. Now we've discussed what high performance is and how can managers build or things to do and things not to do, right? We've talked about it a lot. But what are the core skills that a manager needs to be able to build the right teams to be successful themselves and so that the teams can be successful as well?
I think an important skill would be to have some people management skill, to be aware of people and EQ.
Yeah.
EQ is very basic, but it's necessary. I believe that you need to have some good planning skills. You have to plan ahead because you are leading the team. So you need to see where they're going and to be able to anticipate things that are likely to happen. Proactively lead them through. But I think a very important skill is also to be able to find the answers from within the team, to kind of facilitate, get people to talk. Actually, they know the job better than you because they're doing it all the time. So if we can kind of involve them and get them to share, engage, but also facilitate the answers. They may not be able to articulate it in a particular way, but if you can get a group of people talking about how can we do this better? How can we, if we were to try and increase it by 10 times more, what will we be doing differently? To ask those kind of questions will be interesting because then you draw the best out of the people. So I think an important skill for a leader is to draw the best out of the people they manage.
Yeah. Interesting.
What do you think?
I think there are three very important skills that a manager needs, definitely in this case. In fact, I would say four. Fourth one I'm adding because I love that one, and I think it's a very basic thing to have. I think first and foremost, the person should be able to coach the team members, like you rightly said initially, right? To be able to build up somebody's performance from a low performer to a high performer or medium performer to a high performer, you need to be good at coaching them, right? So I think that's one of the very important skills that comes in handy. The other one is being able to give feedback in a constructive manner, right?
Oh yeah,
people are going to go wrong. People are going to miss. People are going to make mistakes. How do you make those situations learning situations and enable the individual towards a higher and a better performance from there on, right? So I think that's the second most important skill that a manager can have. The third most important skill is being able to delegate effectively, right? It's basically the fine line between explaining somebody the task and letting them do, and then not micromanaging. I think effective delegation is extremely important. And the fourth one, which I said I'm going to add on as a bonus one, is being able to do effective one-on-one meetings with your team members. Because that's
Okay.
where you are able to form bonds with your team members. You're able to understand who they are as individuals, what their aspirations are they driven with growth, etc., or they're happy in their environments, what drives them, what doesn't drive them, what kind of environment are they going to thrive in. So understanding them as individuals is extremely important, and I think being able to do effective one-on-one meetings with
Yeah,
individuals is an extremely important skill for a manager to develop.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree with you.
So,
This thing about giving feedback, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions about giving feedback, isn't
totally.
it? We can
Yeah.
mess things up totally.
Big time.
What have you heard about, or what are some of the practices that go on? Because one of the ones that I absolutely hate is the sandwich, where you say something good and then
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
constructive and then
Right.
something good again.
Right.
It confuses the hell out of people.
So why do you hate it? Tell me more.
Because when I come to give you good feedback, you're going to think, oh no, what's she going to say next? Because I've been using a sandwich all the time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and also I think it was Rick Hansen in his book on happiness, about the rewiring the brain or something. Rick Hansen, I forgot the name of the book, but he says that the brain is like Velcro for painful experiences and Teflon for good experiences. So we tend to, if I give you good feedback and then if I give you bad feedback, you remember the bad, you forget all the good that I've told you. So I think that we tend to do that. It's our natural tendency as humans. So I think it's better that if I'm going to give you good feedback, then I give you good feedback. And we don't have to have a long meeting, it can be very short.
Right.
And I just give you the feedback.
Correct.
If I want to give you something constructive, then I give you something constructive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
like
absolutely.
So what, now what?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the problem?
Correct.
So what's the impact of it? And now what can you do?
Correct.
Very simple.
Yeah. 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 I think the biggest myth that I've seen, managers think is that feedback is one-sided street. Yeah. And in fact, it's actually a two-way street. So if as a manager and a leader, you're not inviting feedback or your team members are not comfortable giving you feedback, then I think they're not operating in a psychologically safe environment, and hence
absolutely
they'll never share what they really think about things, right? And you're living in a dream world in that case.
And you surround yourself with other people who tell you the same
what you want to hear,
thing.
what you want to hear. Yeah.
And then that's how you get disconnected.
Totally. Well, giving feedback and receiving feedback is a one whole big topic,
isn't
in
it?
itself.
Yeah.
And maybe for next time we're going to reserve it. Or what do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So any parting thoughts for our audience? Anything that you would like to tell them before we wrap this up today?
I think leaders, we work very hard, in what we do. And so I think that it's important to also recognize and for how far you've come, what you've done for yourself, to acknowledge yourself.
Yeah.
Because only if you can kind of reinforce yourself, can you reinforce other people.
Correct.
And I think a very big part of our job is thinking work. And we need to plan, actually, before I come into the office, I've already worked on my headspace. I've done all the inner work that I need to do so that when I'm there 100% for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Thank you so much, Laletha. It was lovely having you with us today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I hope you did too.
Yes, been very good conversation. Yeah, thank you for that.
Great. So until next time, you take care and be safe.
Yeah, look forward to that.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you, folks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining with us today. We're going to see you again with a very interesting and new topic very, very soon. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.